fade green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go! And a good Tuesday morning, Birds fans. Happy New Year to our Birds 365 fam. First chance we've had to say welcome to 2023 here on Birds 365. You got your Mac and Mac guys, Jody McDonald, John McMullen. Hopefully your New Year's was a good one. New Year's Day was not great, and that's what we will be talking about the majority of the time here on Birds 365 today. But for those who get to bed early and get up early and check in on Birds 365, you would have to go to bed pretty early last night to know not know what transpired in the National Football League. In the game between the Bengals and the Bills last night, late first quarter, Demar Hamlin, safety for the Bills, tackled T. Higgins on a 10, 12-yard pass play. Good, solid hit to bring Higgins down. Not a bone-crushing hit. He came up after making the tackle and fell back down to the ground. Medical personnel were rushed onto the field. He needed to be resuscitated on the field and had work done on him. They went to the ambulance to get him off the field, and it was just a chilling couple of minutes on the field in Cincinnati. As a matter of fact, I was not watching at the time. I was watching the Sixers, and through the miracle of social media, you get a text, you get a tweet. If you ever see anything like that on the field? I turned over and saw what transpired thereafter, but it was a very just eye-opening and heart-wrenching minute to watch what transpired in Cincinnati last night. Johnny Mack, were you tuned at the time? How did you find out about it? How did you get the news that we had a tragedy unfolding in Cincinnati?
Same way as you, Jody. Social media world. I think I was watching Raw at the time. I was flipping back and forth. Monday Night Raw. I was flipping back and forth between that and the game, and I was on the different station, and I saw, and I quickly pulled back to the game and didn't see the hit live.
Or did I?
Replayed it a number of times. Yeah, it didn't look like an out of the ordinary hit. I mean, you'll see that hit hundreds of times when they do resume the season. And then all of a sudden, just a scary moment. Comes up to his feet. Seemed fine. All of a sudden, just collapsed. Terrible. It was interesting. The first thing I thought of, maybe because I was watching, and you're a wrestling guy. Now, Jerry Lawler was, a much older man. He was an announcer. He had a heart attack live on Raw, cardiac event for people who don't know. I said the one silver lining to it is if, there were medical people there immediately that saved his life. And Jerry talks about it to this day. That's the silver lining here. There were medical people right on the field, CPR, resuscitation, And right now, Demar's in critical condition. Hopefully he pulls through this. But, that's the silver lining. The help was there immediately. But it was just such a terrible situation. And then you saw the good and the bad of social media, because you have all this, terrible, just gauging the announcers and are they doing the proper job, and the immediacy. And I'm like, worry about the kid. Worry about the kid. And it's such a difficult situation. Nobody's expecting to deal with that in that type of situation. That's part of the bad. You had people jumping to conclusions with no information. The narrative that the league wanted to start the game in 5 minutes. I don't know. That to me, Jody, is what's wrong with social media. Everybody's afraid to say, I don't know. I know Troy Benson denied it on a conference call later that night. I was talking to sort of a logistics guy who handles a bunch of stuff for the NFL. I was texting him. He was explaining the situation. Think about it this way, Jody. If you cancel the game immediately, and by immediately I say 10 or 15 minutes, you got 70,000 people headed to their cars. They're not thinking. You got to get ambulances out. You got to get people out. You got to get family out. You got to get officials out. There's logistics to this type of thing. So that story's got to be fleshed out a little bit. Like, I don't think Troy is lying, because that would be a weird thing to lie about. So who came up with that 5-minute narrative? Is that bad reporting? Is that the official making a bad summation? I don't know. But that to me is the biggest thing. Everybody's afraid to say, I don't know. Just care about the kid and having this horrible situation. And as far as what caused it, was it the hit? Was it some underlying condition that went unnoticed for years? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be illegal to say, I don't know. I don't have that information. Hopefully we'll get that information. The good news is they were able to resuscitate him. Hopefully things go in a positive direction, but nobody knows right now.
And the thing that bothered me, and yours truly was on the air, I was supposed to be on after Monday Night Football on WIP last night, so I got on earlier than I was planning on or was supposed to because of the suspension of the game. So I got to get some fan reaction last night. And I took a call from a guy who absolutely said, this is one of the problems in our country, that game should have been played, that the NFL should have come to an immediate decision that it should have been played. And immediately thereafter, I took more calls, and the people were just livid about the foolish stance that the guy took. It's a testament to our country and the shape that our country is in, meaning our country is somehow now gone soft. So, yeah, the immediate reaction is not always good. And here's what I thought about the way it was handled by the NFL. They got it right, okay? At the end of the day, when you look back at it, they handled it the way the correct decision and how to handle it was made. If it took 10 or 12 more minutes than you thought, if it was, and I did see a tweet from a reliable source saying last night that it was the players' union that had gotten to the individual players in the locker room and said, we can't go back out there. You're not going back out there. We'll stand by you. That the players were the ones who made the decision more so than the coaches. And we know that they were communicating with each other on the field, outside the locker room. You saw it on the broadcast that Zach Taylor and Sean McDermott was certainly talking, whether the call came on high from the commissioner's office. However it was determined, they got it right. That's the most important thing. Don't worry about the timing. Don't even worry about who made the decision. The correct decision was made. They had to wait until they found out what kind of shape this young man was in. There's no way to send those players out there with the loss of focus that they would have had. You're just asking for more injuries. Bottom line is, get to the end. Did they get it right? Yes, I thought so. Now they've got a big issue to deal with now. How do you restart that game? How do you incorporate that game? It does really need to be played. If not, then how do you figure out the standings thereafter? So the NFL still got work in front of them. But at the end of the day, when they officially said the game was suspended, they got it right as far as I'm concerned, and that way outweighs everything else.
Yeah, they did get it right, and it is a combination of the players' union and the league. And it wouldn't be. I'm not going to sit here and pretend. I say all the time the NFL doesn't care about safety all that much. They care about only the concussion issue for the most part because of potential future litigation. I talk all. They're scary, and we just went through one at Lincoln Financial Field with Josh Sweat. The day before, stretchered off, and there was I've never seen that place so quiet. There was such a hush when he was leaving the field because everybody was concerned about Josh Sweat. If you go back to C.J. Gardner-Johnson with the lacerated kidney, you said, "Oh, that was a hit." That was a little bit of a stiff hit, certainly. But I thought when he came off the field, immediate thing by his reaction, I thought, oh, CJ got a stinger. You never know when these hits are going to create these situations. Now, you got to go, and I looked it up. It has happened before, but you got to go back to the early 70s. Member of the Lions suffered a heart attack. And it was a different time, and they did continue and play the game. And that's good that we've evolved to the point that, most people care more about the kid than the game. And there's certain people that are always going to be, like you mentioned with your caller, Jody, are going to go down a different route. But, yeah, I mean, that's the problem with social media in general, right? We go that the loudest voices are the most extreme voices, and they use any situation. Doesn't have to be football, doesn't have to be this situation, to fit their particular narrative, whatever that narrative is. And the concern here should be the player and where he is health wise. And again, not an indictable offense to say, I don't know, at 2 minutes after something happens. Not an indictable offense. And more people should take that advice. They really should.
And the only update we can give you this morning is, and it's the same as it was late last night, but again, if you went to bed early, he did suffer cardiac arrest on the field. He was resuscitated. They got him quickly to the hospital. His vitals were stable. And again, last night on WIP, had an ER doctor call me, John, and he filled in some blanks for me. And I thanked him greatly because he did educate us that was a key element of good news last night, that they got his vitals stable. They put him to sleep so that he could rest and continue to heal. He was intubated, but that's not unusual that you get assist breathing with a cardiac arrest. So he was trending in the right direction. He is still in critical condition. There's no new news as of this morning. The majority of the Buffalo Bills left Cincinnati last night. Several of his teammates did stay to be with him in the hospital, but the NFL has made no statement, and I don't know that there's going to be an immediate statement even today as to how that game will be picked up and or played at a future date. And they're running out of dates in the National Football League because the season is coming to an end. And the Philadelphia Eagles were in the same place they were 2 weeks ago. Only need to win one more game to lock up first place in the NFC East and the number one seed overall in the NFC. They still don't have that after 2 straight losses. And you mentioned the Josh Sweat hit. It's just unfortunate that they couldn't suspend the Eagles game against the Saints on Sunday because they could have dodged a bullet after their loss to New Orleans, in which, again, the offense just didn't flat out show up. Gardner Minshew, play calling, A.J. Brown not running all the way through a route. There's a lot to be discussed about the Eagles just in general, but off Sunday's performance, more specifically about the offense. John and I are going to do that with you. We're going to get a little bit of help. Tommy Lawler from EaglesBlitz.com is going to jump in with us. Tommy's been covering the team for years. He goes back to the team that had set the record for most sacks in a season for the Philadelphia Eagles. That would now be your 2022 Philadelphia Eagles with only 7 more this past week. can't blame pressure from the defensive line for the loss to the Saints. We'll talk Eagles with Tommy Lola next. And then in hour number 2, our usual Monday guy, Tuesday this week, because we were off yesterday for the holiday, Chris Franklin's going to jump aboard. So we've got able-bodied assistants to join McMullen and McDonald. We appreciate you tuning in with Mac and Mac here on Birds 365.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know how Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Ram starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
Did you know taxes could be your biggest expense during retirement? Are most of your assets in tax-deferred accounts like IRAs and 401ks? Taxes are historically low today, but we're facing significant headwinds in the future. Do you have a plan? The Thrive Financial team has more than 100 years of experience helping people across the Delaware Valley with forward-looking tax planning. Learn how to shift your money from forever tax to no or low tax accounts. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. John McMullen, Jody McDonald. Then we are lucky enough to be joined by Tommy Lola, longtime Eagles reporter, writing these days for EaglesBlitz.com. Tommy, Happy New Year. Were you watching last night's Monday Night Football game between the Bengals and the Chiefs when it had to be stopped because of the injury to Demar Hamlin?
I had gone into the kitchen to make a sandwich, and I came back out, and all the players were on the field in a circle, and I had no idea what was going on, so I started listening, and things just got weird from there.
Yeah, scary situation. We went through a scary situation here in Philadelphia the day before that seems much less scary now that you saw what happened in Cincinnati last night, but with Josh Sweat. That was weird, Tommy, to see the hush over Lincoln Financial Field. People forget some people forget how dangerous this sport is. And I don't know how you change that. I mean, it's just, yeah. And we talk about it all the time with concussion. Yeah, you're right. Football's football, and you can't make it safe. That's always been one of my arguments. I think it's disingenuous to kind of legislate safety into the game. I think that's the disingenuous part. It's violent. And that hit wasn't even all that violent. but bad things can happen when you have collisions between very fast and very powerful people.
Yeah, I was texting with a buddy a couple of weeks back, and I said, if there was ever anything that would make me quit watching football, it's injuries. And not even just like what we saw with Josh Sweat and last night with Demar Hamlin, just all the guys, every pile, you see somebody get up to grab at an ankle, a knee, and these guys, their bodies, it's like they're going through 50 car crashes a game.
Yeah.
And the amount of pain they inflict on each other, they take on themselves, it's crazy. It really is. Football is just an amazing game. Bill Curry once talked about, there used to be a saying that football is a contact sport. He said, no. Dancing is a contact sport. Football is a collision sport. And it really is. I mean, it's about violent collisions. And it's part of what makes it special, because as human beings, we're primal, right? We still have some of that stuff in us that goes back to the caveman days. And there's a part of us that enjoys violence when it's in a controlled, appropriate type of setting. And football taps into that. And it allows people to go out and do those things on Sundays and Saturdays and do it in a format that's somewhat safe and what have you. But it still is, it's dangerous. And there's times when you sit there and you question, should we be watching this? Should these guys be playing this?
Well, coming up in a couple of weeks, you'll get a first-hand account of what it would like to play football without really playing football with the Pro Bowl. They're going to have competitions. They're not going to have an actual game, and we'll see how much everybody likes that. I'm not suggesting it's an opening a door for a change in the NFL, but they are going to try something a little different.
It is interesting, and we're going to get to the Eagles, I promise, to the listeners. But one last thing, Tommy, because you brought that up. I always think about boxing. It's been a real long time, but if you go back to really Muhammad Ali's era, it was still like the sport. When a big fight happened, it was the thing. And boxing's no longer like that. And for people that say, well, football's so popular, it can never change. Do you believe that? Do you believe that it couldn't be affected years from now?
Oh, I don't think anything is immune. I think if history's taught us anything, it's that nothing is ever completely safe. I've got a nephew who's playing JV football. He played this past season, and there were some of his friends who their parents might not want him to play. My sister was nervous about him playing a little bit, because it's one thing to tune on a game and watch, but when it's your child or your brother, your son, your nephew, whoever, it's out there on that field, and they're in those piles, it makes it different. It all of a sudden you're like, okay, you get worried every time there's a collision. And in fact, there was one game where a young man had an issue, and they had to bring an ambulance to the field to take him away. Now, luckily, he turned out to be okay. But it gets scary. It's scary stuff, and all it takes is enough parents saying, you know what, I'm going to let my kid play basketball or soccer or baseball or whatever. And all of a sudden, if football doesn't have the best players on the field, who knows what the future is. I think it's okay, but never say never.
Tommy, a less scary thing, but scary just the same, is the realization that the Eagles could lose 3 straight football games, and they could give away a 98% chance to lock up the number 1 seed in the NFC after 2 straight losses in Dallas last week, home to New Orleans on Sunday. All of a sudden, there's a little pressure built up on the Philadelphia Eagles. Can we spin this at all and say the pressure is a good thing, that had they wanted that, they might have been off for too long? Or do we just have to look at this as an uh-oh moment?
Well, I think the pressure can be a good thing, because let's face it, when they get to the postseason, there's going to be pressure. And so this just starts that a little bit early. So there is a positive spin to this. Now, the negative side of it is very obvious. It's that they shouldn't have to be in a situation. They should be sitting there thinking about, do we start Gardner Minshew or Ian Book this week? Who do we want at left tackle? Who do we want at right tackle? And instead, they've got to go out there and game plan and say, we've got to win this game. And now the ironic thing, of course, is they're sitting there going, will the Giants play their starters?
Same thing happened last year. Amazing. The Giants
really
don't
is.
have to play the game the Eagles do, and that's a good thing for the Eagles. I mean, the Giants, I can't imagine where the Giants are set up as the 6th seed, likely going to face a Minnesota team that is just absolutely leaking oil. I mean, they got a chance to get to the divisional round. They're not going to risk Saquon Barkley. They're not going to risk Daniel Jones, are they, Tommy Lawler?
It wouldn't shock me if they do go with their guys. Brian Daboll has really tried to put a stamp on that team by stressing culture and competitiveness. And you go back to the season opener when he went for 2 at the end of the game because he didn't want to play for the tie. He wanted to win, and he knew that team needed a culture change. And it was funny, right after the game, they said, "Are you going to rest your starters?" They said, "The offseason is for rest. We're going to play our guys." The next day, they said, "Are you going to rest your guys?" I said, "We're going to do what's best for the team." In the heat of the moment, he was like all fired up, and we're going to go play.
And then Joe Shane got in his ear, basically.
The Mara family, the GM, maybe his wife, who knows? They said, "Listen, if there's nothing to play for, Daniel Jones can hold a clipboard. Saquon Barkley can guard Daniel Jones holding the clipboard, and because it's one thing you do want to have that spirit. Let's go fight. Let's compete. Let's battle every second of every game, but you also have to be smart because one injury and it ruins your season. And like you say, the Vikings, nobody's scared of the Vikings. The only team scared of them, I guess, is probably the Vikings themselves.
So let me ask you this, Tommy, because last week I proposed a potential theory for the Eagles and was told you're nuts. A middle of the road gray area solution with Jalen Hurts being active this past week against the Saints, potentially not playing on the sideline, only break glass in emergency, have Gardner Minshew play, and if he plays well enough, Jalen just stands there the whole time. And my partner and others told me, no, Jody, either he's well enough to play and he starts, or he's not well enough and he's not active. There is no middle ground there. Can Brian Daboll find a middle ground? Can he start Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley and keep them up, keep the momentum of the team going, but then pull them at some time to protect them? Or is this another one of those either-or situations? Either they play or they don't play.
Well, they're healthy now, so that changes things. Then it's a question of, does he want them to get on the field just to avoid getting rusty, to keep them fresh, to keep things going? And if he wants to do that, he certainly could play them, like we see in the preseason, starters go out and play a couple of series, a quarter, and then they sit and the backups take over. The question for him is, what's the reward and what's the risk? And what reward does he get from having them play if they're not going to play the whole game or the vast majority of the game? And, with the Eagles, defense, with the pass rush they've got, it may not be worth it to have Daniel Jones out there. God forbid he gets sacked 6-7 times. What do you do if he gets hurt in one of those plays? And Saquon Barkley, all it takes is, a big hit from, Marcus Epps or TJ Edwards. All of a sudden his ankle or his knee gets twisted and you lose him and you lose Saquon Barkley, and that offense changes in a hurry. So he's really got to think what's best. And if I was advising him, I probably would lean toward resting your guys if there's literally nothing to gain from it. And it's not like they're a red hot team. They're 2-2 in their last 4 games. If this team was clicking along and had won 7 in a row and had this momentum and they were like a well-oiled machine, but, they got blown out by the Eagles 4 weeks ago. They've got a close win, a close loss, and then a blowout win over the Colts, which was essentially like an exhibition game. So I would probably rest my guys, play in the playoffs, and see if you can get, magic to happen for you.
Yeah, and ultimately I think that's the way they will go. But for the Eagles, Tommy, I think it's just about getting right. I mean, they want to start feeling good about themselves. Jalen Hurts, ultimately, they probably didn't want to be in this position, but I think he's going to start. I think he's going to play. And we'll see how it shakes out, because you're not going to have Lane Johnson. Right tackle was an issue, but if I go back to the game against New Orleans, and I hate to do this, I'm going to break one of my own rules, but I'm going to break it because the performance was that bad. The old adage is quarterback gets too much credit, and when team wins, gets too much blame when a team loses. Not this time. Gardner was that bad. I mean, he was bad. To use a baseball analogy, that's like your starting pitcher goes out there, gives up 6, 7 in the first inning, and you as a manager are sitting there, well, what the hell am I going to do? I mean, we're done. We're done for this particular day. That's how poorly he played. Now, Jody, to your point, when I from the Eagles mentality, they were never going to unfold your plan, but it would have been nice to have a relief pitcher because Gardner just didn't have it. And there's certain days where, mediocre players just don't have it. Is it as simple as that?
He played poorly. There's just no question about it. Nick Sirianni is never going to come out and say that publicly because that's just what he does. But, if you watch the game live, if you go back and watch the tape, Minshew just stunk up the joint. There's no question about it. The frustrating thing is that the Eagles didn't then counter by saying, all right, let's really run the ball more. Now, they did start running the ball more in the second half, and then all of a sudden they had a slew of penalties. Well, it's hard to run the ball when it's 2nd 11, 1st and 15. And it's, you do have your best player is A.J. Brown. Your second best player is Devontae Smith. Your third best player is Dallas Goedert, or however you want to, rate them. You've got to get on the ball, and you can't get on the ball if Miles Sanders has it in his hands. So you have to throw the ball.
And plus, Miles was banged up. He was wearing a brace on his knee. He was not healthy.
Right.
He was fighting through it. So you got to throw that into the equation as well.
Absolutely. And it's just, it was a game of really bad circumstances all around. But really, the Eagles needed Minshew to play at least at a solid level. The game was 13-10 in the third quarter. All he's got to do is lead them on a field goal drive. It isn't like he's got to go lead them to 28 points for the win. Just lead them down to tie the game, see what happens. And instead, when they're down 13-10, he throws that pick six, and that's ball game. And so it was frustrating to watch him play so poorly. If he had been mediocre, that'd have been fine. You said, hey, he's a backup. Backups are going to be mediocre, but he wasn't even mediocre. He was bad. And it really hurt the team, and it showed you just, for all the arguments that people had a couple of weeks ago about Jalen Hurts as MVP. Well, you saw, guess what? The Eagles offense isn't just somebody where you can insert whoever at quarterback and they're always going to produce at a certain level.
Gardner Minshew aspired to get to mediocre. That's pretty damn sad. Despite the fact I agree with John, 90% of the blame for the loss falls on the offense. 90% of that falls on Gardner Minshew. I want to ask you about the defense. Once again, tremendous pressure on the quarterback. Mid-season this year, Tommy, at one juncture, I think after week 6 or week 7, the top-rated cornerback in the National Football League, as per passer rating against, was James Bradford, like below 40, in the 30s, high 30s. And the second highest cornerback in the league was Darius Slay, his teammate of the Philadelphia Eagles, with a passer against rating in the low 40s of like 42. Both of those guys have gotten beat up pretty damn bad in the last couple of weeks. But Slay over a longer period of time. Bradford, the last 2 weeks, gave up a big touchdown to CeeDee Lamb and a 50-plus yard gain this week against the Saints. What's wrong with the Eagles' quote-unquote shutdown cornerbacks?
Well, I think, if you go back and watch the Saints game, Shaheed is a speed guy. Bradbury is not a speed guy. And so when you get Bradbury isolated on a speed receiver, the guy's going to be able to run by him. That's been the case. That was the thing with Bradbury. You can go deep on him, but usually you want the safety to cheat over to that side. The safety didn't, and all of a sudden you have, I think it was a 58-yard gain on that play. The touchdown he gave up to CeeDee Lamb, he read that play and he thought it was going to break in. He was ready to pounce on the ball that broke outside, and CeeDee Lamb's wide open for the touchdown. Darius Slay has just been a little bit sloppy in coverage. It isn't like these guys have forgotten how to play. Teams have just figured out ways to attack them, and some of it's taking chances. Sometimes in the past, quarterbacks rather weren't throwing the ball at Darius Slay. And when they did throw the ball to Bradbury, there'd be safety there. Maybe that's the loss of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He's not there all of a sudden. Reed Blankenship has tackled well and hit well, but he's not going to maybe cover as well as Gardner-Johnson. So there's been a couple of issues there, but I still think that's a good pair of corners, and I think they can help the Eagles succeed in the playoffs.
Yeah, how much of that? I just looked it up because it was an interesting point by Jody. Slay's still at 71.9 opposition passer rating. Bradbury's in the 50s. Now they weren't where they once were, but if you look at the league as a whole, let's see. I'm trying to, number 33 in the league is Zach Wilson at 72.8. Is some of that just a market correction? I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to play pass defense in this league, and you're still under the worst quarterback by statistically in the NFL, both guys. So is it just you can't play lights out through 18 weeks?
No, that's exactly right. And the other thing with statistics like this, I'm always curious, the people who do this, these ratings rather, what did they put that 3rd and 30 play? Did they put that against Darius Slay? Because that wasn't his receiver, T.Y. Hilton, who caught that ball in Dallas.
Yeah.
It looked when you watched live like it was his receiver, but it wasn't. He was covered in the zone and he was covered in the underneath zone and was the safety who had over the top. So you wonder who's doing the ratings and do they understand the real responsibilities on a given play of just because a defensive back is on the TV feed running with that receiver doesn't necessarily mean that that's his guy. So
Oh, yeah.
I question that a little bit, but no, they were playing at an exceptionally high level earlier in the season, and they've come to earth a little bit, but still they're both playing very good football.
All right, since you went there, I want to follow up there. Something that's happened 2 weeks running now in the Eagles' losses, which concerns me. Slay on that play, the 3rd and 30 conversion. You're right; it wasn't eventually his responsibility. I thought he misplayed it, that he was up too tight. You need to be 5 yards off the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 30, playing in the flat. So what if they complete a ball in the flat? Back it up a little bit, ride the receiver further than he did, and maybe the safety has the chance to catch up. So it wasn't his main responsibility, but he tried to hold himself blameless because some people critiqued him for that. And it was just a really bad look. You don't understand what we do. If you can't talk to me about the way that I play, his firing back on social media unnecessary. And this past week with A.J. Brown, on the pick 6 slant, he did not run hard. He did not look to catch the football. The explanation afterwards, Gardner needed to look at him because he knew that the route was going to be jumped. So then you jog through your rep there, and he got a little defensive about those who critiqued and or questioned him afterwards. And it was Gardner's fault because Gardner didn't look at him. 2 weeks running, Eagles star players throwing teammates under the bus. Any concern for you?
A little bit maybe, but in the modern era with social media, that stuff's going to happen because that's where these guys were getting a lot of flack, social media, and that's where they went to address some of this stuff. And that's just stuff that didn't happen 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and certainly you go back further, and it just didn't exist. They would have to listen to fans here and there, and they might make a comment to a reporter, but these days, people, because they go on to the Twitter or what have you, and they tag them and say, hey, I saw what you did, and enough people start yelling at you, it's hard to not want to react to that a little bit. With AJ, he gave an explanation as to what happened, and did he throw Gardner under the bus a little bit? Yeah, but listen, Gardner screwed up, and I would have preferred if AJ said, listen, I still should have run that route harder, because he should have. Gardner's the one at fault, but AJ Brown, it would have been nice if he had run that harder just in case Gardner screws up, because you always want to protect your teammate in case they make a mistake.
Yeah.
And the 3rd and 30, that was just a debacle. Josiah Scott just screwed it up, but if Slay had fallen back more, maybe it would have affected it a little bit, but really that was that play was on Scott.
Yeah, and I agree, Tommy. I think it's a social media thing. I was talking about it with Hamlin. I mean, it's changed the world, and people are chirping, and you bring up the film, and a lot of people watch film now because it's easy to get, and a lot of people don't know what a specific play is designed to do, and they make assumptions. Some people know their stuff really well, but some people make assumptions and wrong assumptions. And, players get upset when they get blamed for things that aren't their fault. However, we're talking about Gardner Minshew and Josiah Scott here as the players who made the mistakes, backup players. Here's my concern with the Eagles, and I'll bring in the coaching staff. The next man up mentality, it's great to say. It's a coaching point. You want to prop up your guys. I always talk about coaching is an optimistic profession by nature. You have to be optimistic. You have to, because these are the guys you have to count on. And you can't just run them down. I think a lot of fans don't understand that. However, you can't believe it. You can't believe it and say, oh, Gardner can do what Jalen can do. Josiah can do what Avonte can do. Reed Blankenship can do what C.J. Gardner-Johnson can do. Jack Driscoll can do what Lane Johnson can do. If you start believing that, you're going to have some issues. Do you think the Eagles believe too much in their backup players?
No, I remember last year, Jonathan Gannon, somebody asked him, do you have the pieces to run your defense? And he said, yeah, if you're on this unit, we
he
believe
says
in
it all
you.
the time. All the time he says it.
And it's like if we give him some, sodium pentothal?
Yeah.
He'd be like, are you kidding me? I've got got Eric Wilson as my starting linebacker. Yeah. There's no way they believe some of the stuff. They just can't. Now they tell them that the same way that you or I might try to talk ourselves into something. Oh, I'm going to go climb this mountain, or I'm going to finish this marathon. You've got to have a positive mindset. But if in reality you don't believe it, and you could tell when you watch the game plan against Dallas, that game plan was built for Gardner Minshew, and it made sense, and he made it work, and the offense really clicked, and that was so encouraging to see. And that's what made it so frustrating to watch the game.
All right, but real quick, let me just follow up here with you, Tom. This is I think you're right. For the most part in Dallas, they did a good job offensively. But we'll go back to the 3rd and 30 play. I told Jody this day after day. Just play Tampa 2 and get out. They're playing, essentially Tampa 2 inverts, where they're bringing the nickel cornerback back to the deep safety and having Reed Blankenship come up. If that's Avonte Maddox, you're probably off the field. Well, you're doing the same damn thing with Josiah Scott. Now, fast forward this week, and you're doing the 4-by-1 thing, and Nick explained this yesterday, and it was his fault. It was his fault. It was his fault because they put Gardner Minshew in that position, whereas Jalen Hurts is probably going to recognize it and see, all right, I got to go to the other way. And that's what A.J. Brown is thinking. The quarterback understands Marshawn Lattimore is pretty good. He's got the leverage. He understands what's coming. You're counting on Gardner Minshew. So I think there's some objective plays that you can look at and saying they are just leaving up to lesser players to do what they expect the star players are doing.
Well, I'll disagree with you on that a little bit. So with Gardner Minshew, he's got 20 plus starts in the NFL. This is not like a guy who's making his second start or first start. He's in those quarterback meetings. He's getting the same teaching that Jalen Hurts is. That is a mistake that whether you're the starter or the backup, you should absolutely understand and see that. He just didn't. He looked to that side initially and then looked to the other side and never looked back. And that's on him. That's completely on him. And unless that's a guy making his first or second start, or a guy who hasn't played in forever, but he just played an entire game. He's been in parts of other games. And again, he's got plenty of experience. He should have done that. The Josiah Scott play, that was just Jonathan Gannon trying to get too cute.
Yep.
When it's 3rd and 30, don't try to trick him. That would have been a perfect time for the Jim Schwartz sticks defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Just rush forward and line 7 guys up.
Baby.
Yeah, exactly. You don't try to confuse them on 3rd and 30. Get your guys deep. Why he did that, I don't know. I'm sure if there was something he had in mind, because Gannon's not a stupid guy. We might get frustrated with him, but he's not stupid. He had something in his mind that made him think that was the right call, that he maybe would try to somehow get Dak to do something that would be favorable, and it blew up. So those are are cases where I think that the coaches, the one Minshew, I think is just completely on Minshew. The other one I do think is more on Gannon. He should have just. But even if that is Avonte Maddox, I don't care who that is. It's not worth the risk.
Yeah.
Just put your guy deep and have him keep everything in front of him and attack it in front of him. Third and 30 is see it and go get it. That's all you want.
Deception unnecessary is what Gannon should have been thinking. All
If
right,
it's
let's
end. That's different. But third and 30.
Let's end on this note, Tommy. And it ties into what John was just talking about. The coaching staff having to adjust on the fly. If you've got a backup player in, you have to acknowledge in your own mind the way you call games, the way you do things. All right, there's a drop-off here. Might not be a drastic drop-off, but there's a drop-off. Lane Johnson to Jack Driscoll's pretty drastic drop-off, but you get my point. And you have to acknowledge it, and you have to play around it. This week with Jalen Hurts, he's got a bit of a bad shoulder. They'll know how bad it is, what risks they are taking. Are they putting him in jeopardy? How badly do they need this game? They've been answering those questions for themselves the last several weeks, and they need to reevaluate and engage before this game on Sunday. If he starts, which we're led to believe that's the way that it's trending, do they call a different game plan? Do you just adjust? I'm not saying give up on Jalen Hurts running the football, put him at risk when he has to run. I don't think you can do that either, because the way Jalen Hurts plays the game has gotten the Eagles to where they are at 13-3, 13-1 before Jalen went out. But do you skim back a little bit? Can you say, if you're Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni and everyone else in the offense who are in those meetings, yeah, we need to call a couple less designated running plays. We need to coach up Jalen on the zone reads and the RPOs. Listen, if it's debatable in your mind, give it to Miles. Don't keep it. Get it in his hands, and let's go from there. Does the Eagles coaching staff have to coach slightly differently with Jalen Hurts if he plays this week because of his shoulder?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. He's so valuable to you that, you've got to win this game. So your first focus has to be on winning. If the Giants sit their starters, that's going to change things entirely, because it gives you a real feeling of confidence about winning. If the Giants play their starters and they go all out, then maybe you have to mix in some Hurts runs, but you've got to be judicious and you've got to preach the message to him. We need you for the postseason. So be careful, pick and choose your spots to be brave. If it's a critical play that we need to win the game, take your chances. If it's just a random first down in the first quarter, just get down, get rid of the football. Don't take the hit. And usually he's pretty smart about that. The play in Chicago, he was caught from behind. But usually he's really good about getting out in space, and if he sees a defender, he gets down. And that's one of the reasons I've had confidence in him staying healthy despite being a guy who takes some hits here and there, because he tries to be smart about it.
If you want to follow Tommy on Twitter, do so at Lawler NFL, and check out EagleBlitz.com, his website, where he gives you all of his Eagle insights. Tommy, we appreciate you jumping in with us and giving me your insights here today. Happy New Year, bud.
Happy New Year to you guys, and hopefully we talk about a better game the next time we chat.
Yeah.
That is
Thanks,
Tommy Lawler. It will be a playoff game, that's for damn sure. There
will be a playoff game. That's the good thing.
Right.
We
know the Eagles going to the playoffs. where that game is going to be played, who it's going to be against, is yet to be determined.
It's going to be at Lincoln Financial Field. I mean, come on. The Giants don't have to play. They're not going to play.
Johnny Mac, I believe you told me last week the Saints stink.
They do stink.
Quote unquote.
But Gardner Minshew played the worst game he's probably ever played. I don't know. I'd have to go through his Jacksonville tape, but he played horrifically. And the Eagles got the ball with a chance to win down 13-10. The Saints do stink. They should have won that game by 3 touchdowns.
I get that, but they won the game, and the Eagles didn't. So a team that stinks beat the Philadelphia Eagles this week for their second consecutive loss, and now have to play for their lives on Sunday against the Giants. So nothing is a given. I'm not giving this game to the Eagles on Sunday. You say right now, Jody, who are you going to pick? Which side? Eagles, Giants. I'm going to take the Eagles. but I'm not doing so with uber confidence of, yeah, it'll be the same 3-touchdown blowout that it was in New York earlier this year. I don't know that with the way the Eagles are playing right now and not knowing who's going to be at quarterback just yet for the Philadelphia.
Yeah, I have uber confidence that Jalen Hurts is cleared and is playing. I no longer have uber confidence in, Gardner Minshew after watching that performance. If you told me before the Dallas game, well, they would lose to Dallas but put up 455 yards, whatever it was, I'd say, well, that's fine. They lost a shootout, but that's pretty good. And then I said, and I did say they would beat the Saints. And that was just a horrific performance. I mean, that was an awful performance by the quarterback. So you do lose a little confidence from that standpoint in the backup quarterback. But I haven't lost confidence in Jalen Hurts. If he's healthy, yeah. I mean, they did what they did to the Giants in the first game. There's some, it's more difficult to play a team the second time. And that's played out. I mean, they lost to Washington. They lost to Dallas the second time. So there's some curveballs thrown into it. But I still have uber confidence if Jalen Hurts is on the field.
As does everyone here in Philadelphia right now. I don't know if Chris Sims does, but most people have confidence in him. Are you at least ready to skim back on Gardner Minshew is one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL?
No, I'm not, because there are not, Jody, there are not 32 starting level quarterbacks at any time in the NFL. There are a lot of bad quarterbacks. And I think, people don't listen to what I say. From a meritocracy standpoint, Gardner Minshew was one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the world. He wasn't on Sunday. He was awful. But again, that's one game. That's 60 minutes of football. He has played, as Tommy pointed out, he has played quite a bit. And the week before, he played at a relatively high level where you would easily say, all right, and Nick Sirianni said it, he's one of the best, 32 quarterbacks in the world.
I disagree with both you and Nick Sirianni. He was part of 3 turnovers last week. I know he threw for a lot of yards, but if you want to just I guess my turnovers on the wide receiver for not coming away with the football. He put the football in bad spots, and he was part of a fumble. 3 turnovers. You can't be, in my estimation, you can't have an A game with 3 turnovers.
Well, and I said, I'm not putting all the culpability on Quez Watkins, but I put the majority of the culpability. Evidently, people have no problem with the culpability on A.J. Brown, and I don't put much culpability at all on A.J. Brown. I thought that was 95% Gardner Minshew. Yet people want to blame him for, more of a 50-50, and I would argue certainly 60-40 in the receiver aspect. But that's getting too far in the weeds. My only point with Gardner Minshew is the context. And I always say, fans are provincial in general. Let's be honest, but not just in Philadelphia, everywhere. They follow their team and they don't follow anybody else. There are some bad, stinking quarterbacks. There are never 32 guys who deserve to be starting quarterbacks in the NFL. It's like starting pitchers in baseball, Jody. You have number 1 guys, true aces. Well, there's 30 teams. How many teams are there in baseball?
30.
30. There's 30 teams. There's not 30 aces, but there's 30 number 1 pitchers who are tops in their rotation, but there's not 30 aces. There are a lot of bad quarterbacks in the NFL. And when Marcus Mariota is getting thrown out there, and the Zach, well, no offense, I hate to go down the chat. I mean, Zach Wilson's awful. There are some bad starting quarterbacks in this league. But what I've also said is, and this is where people miss seemingly, he's not going to get an opportunity because nobody wants to sell Gardner Minshew to their fan base. But they'll sell Zach Wilson a high round pick. Some of those high round picks aren't ready, Jody. And at that particular time, they're not starting level quarterbacks. That's all I'm saying. He's one of the best 32 quarterbacks. That doesn't mean he's good.
I just boldly and blatantly disagree with you. He's not. In my opinion, he's not. He hasn't shown that. He played a bunch for a god-awful Jacksonville team, and I'll give him points for toughness. He didn't win any games down there, and yeah, he wasn't the only problem. They weren't a very good football team, but he didn't lift them to anything. And now he's 1-3 as an equal starter. He's not one of the 32 best quarterbacks on the planet. I'm sorry. You need to come up with a measurement that proves that to me, because with my eyes, I cannot come to that conclusion.
Well, you're the passer rating guy, not me. How's that for a measurement? I mean, look at his passer rating. It's better than a lot of guys. I mean, the Taylor Heineke's of the world, the Mariotas of the world, guys like that. I mean, the Davis Mills of the world. I know you're not a Davis Mills fan. The Carson Wentz's of the world. Let's be honest. Carson has gone into the you know what. The Zach Wilsons of the world. Kenny Pickett. Now, Kenny Pickett has far more potential, but I'll say that. But right now, he's played some bad football, even though Pittsburgh's coming up, because Mike Tomlin's never going to be under 500. He's just not allowed to be under 500. So he's got more potential, but he's not playing. There's so many bad quarterbacks. It's more a reflection of that than it's a reflection of, oh, do I want Gardner Minshew to be my starting quarterback? Absolutely not. No. But there's so many bad quarterbacks, Jody. That's my point.
Okay. And my point is he's not in the top 32. If he is for you, so be it. He's not in the top 32 for me. Accomplishment, projection, a lot of things taken into it. I can't make Gardner Minshew.
Well, the projection part changes the equation. I said meritocracy. I said how he plays. He has played better than
but Carson Wentz is better than Gardner Minshew. Carson Wentz wasn't as bad as Gardner Minshew this week. Carson Wentz at one point was playing on an MVP type level. So there needs to be some subjectivity involved in it, because if you just go by numbers, well, then there are a whole bunch of quarterbacks that have had better.
Yeah, but I'm not the numbers guy. I'm with you 100%. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm saying you are a numbers guy. So it seems to me you're moving the goalpost, because the passer rating is not good enough for Gardner Minshew, but it's good enough for other people. So if you're going to move the goalposts, yeah, I'm saying on a meritocracy standpoint right now, there's not 32 quarterbacks in the world better than Gardner Minshew. There's a lot of bad quarterbacks. That's not a compliment. If you're in the bottom 5 of 27 to 32, where I've consistently said Gardner is, that means you're not good. And you should be looking, if you're a team and you're in that position to where you have one of the bottom 5, you should be looking for the next guy. I agree with wholeheartedly. You should be looking for an improvement. But unfortunately, there aren't 32 people in this world who can play the position at a high level in the NFL. There's probably not 15, to be honest.
Well, and there's 32 teams, so somebody's got to fill that void from 16 to 32, because there are 32 teams. And yes, if part of it is, do you believe you can win with a guy in the future? And I just have zero belief that Gardner Minshew is that guy. For me, he's never been a starter-worthy player in the league, and he sure wasn't a starter-worthy player this year, despite some people saying there won't be a drop-off when Gardner Minshew goes in for Jalen Hurts. And not just Chris Sims. I'm talking about Eagle fans who are saying that Gardner Minshew can step in and do what Jalen Hurts does. Well,
I leave the station at that point. I'm not going down that route.
We found out that surely is not the case. All right, McMullen and McDonald, Mac and Mac here with you on Birds 365. Quickie timeout. We'll continue to break down what the hell happened against the Saints. And Chris Franklin of NJ.com is going to join us coming up about 20 minutes from now.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes, to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Ram starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Got your Mac guys here on Birds 365. A kind of troublesome Tuesday after the Eagles lost 2 consecutive games. They still are exactly where they were 2 weeks ago. They just have a smaller window of opportunity. Their ability to take it easy has gone by the wayside because they need to win this week to lock up home field advantage throughout the playoffs and the NFC playoffs and win an NFC East crown. Yeah, they could get lucky and they could back into it. The Cowboys could lose to the Commanders. Yeah, I'm not seeing that happening. The 49ers could lose to the Cardinals. Yeah, I'm not seeing that happening either. So they're going to have to go out and take care of their own business, John. And the key aspect will be, will Jalen Hurts be capable of playing? How do you think that plays this week? As far as information goes, you and I from time to time chide Nick Sirianni on being overly protective of competitive advantage that
works out. How'd that work out this week? The dog and pony show from Thursday, that nonsense the Eagles do. Oh yeah, Dennis Allen's worried about Jack Driscoll playing right tackle. I told you I couldn't report that. I mean, how silly is that? And Jalen Hurts didn't take one rep, Jody. Didn't take one first team rep all week. Gardner took every single one of them. Nonsense.
He went out and Jalen went out. He did throw the ball though, right?
Yeah,
he played catch with someone on Thursday afternoon in practice. Can you confirm that?
I got video of it. Yeah. Please, there's Mr. Hurts. Please take all the video you want.
Exactly. So I assume that the Eagles will be closed mouth, cards close to the vest, call it what you want as far as information goes. At some point, they will have to admit that Jalen's going to play. Their injury reports that must be filed, and they did put him down as doubtful this week, so that was somewhat telling if you thought there was any chance that he was going to play. Give me your best guess at timelines and hidden agendas as to how this is going to play out leading up this Sunday. 425, John. It could have been Could have been Sunday night. Could have been worst case scenario for all you beat guys. It was kind of middle of the road. I know you were all rooting for Sunday at 1. You got Sunday at 4:25. How are we going to get there with Jalen Hurts'
Eagles,
status as quarterback?
People don't realize how badly the Eagles screwed me with this loss to the Saints. It would have been Sunday at 1. But it's not the worst case scenario. I do think it'll be evident Thursday. Remember, we're in Wednesday walkthrough season, so we're not going to get to see practice until Thursday. And I think it was evident when I knew he wasn't playing last week. It was when they do their, I mentioned it on the show. I couldn't say it flat out, but when they do their ball security drills, he did not participate, which I could report, but that was the clear indication he was not cleared for contact. I imagine if he's cleared for contact by Thursday, we will know he's going to play in essence, and we'll be able to see that if he's in the ball security drills. If he's not cleared, then you got some issues.
So we see that shakes out over the week. My guess is I'm with John. He knows better than me, but I think that Jalen Hurts is going to play, but we will not know. And the Eagles are not going to tell us. Now, when I critique the head coach here, let me just go on the record because people get bent out of shape and they overreact. I'm going to take a shot at Nick Sirianni. I think Nick Sirianni is absolutely in the conversation for Coach of the Year in the National Football League. I might go so far as to say made the best coach win this Sunday. If Sirianni wins and finishes up 14-3, give him the award. If Brian Dable comes in and beats the Jalen Hurts-led Eagles with or without his starters, he might be eligible for the award. Oh, by the way, I got a call on CBS Sports this weekend who suggested Dougie P should get the nod for getting the Jaguars.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, they got to win. They got to win on Saturday night, but I think they're going to win. The Jags I'm talking about. I have no problem with people putting Doug in there. That's one of my easiest predictions of the preseason was how happy Jacksonville was going to be with Doug Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because he's a good coach, but because of what they had there before. And it's worked out that way, and it's not a surprise to me at all. And Trevor Lawrence having Doug Peterson and company, that's a good thing not only for Jacksonville, but the NFL.
He was replacing the dumpster fire that was Urban Meyer. And the other Jacksonville point I made on my show, and I know you know this, a lot of people around the NFL gave the Jaguars a hard time for what they paid Christian Kirk as a free agent.
Yeah, he's played great.
He's got 1,000 yards. They needed a first-team lead guy, wide receiver. They knew they were overpaying him, but to get him to come to Jacksonville, a bad team that didn't look like they were going anywhere on paper, with a new head coach, they had to overpay to get him. They did. He has lived up to the paycheck. They did. They lauded on him. Oh, by the way, the Eagles were in the running for Christian Kirk. They really wanted Chris. The Jaguars did the Eagles a favor because if they'd gotten Christian Kirk, then chances are they don't trade for A.J. Brown. So you should thank the Jacksonville general manager twice over for making that move. Congrats for getting a player who's lived up to his contract and allowing the Eagles to get an even better player than Christian Kirk. So I did talk too much about the Jaguars on my CBS show this weekend. This conversation started.
I will say this though, Jody, because if Christian Kirk would have came here, I think people would have been thrilled. I think he's a good player. Now, because remember, you don't know, you don't have AJ Brown,
right.
So you don't know AJ Brown. He's somewhere else, wherever. Maybe Tennessee keeps him. Maybe they trade him somewhere else. I think they would have been very happy, but yeah, sure. they got a better player, so they got lucky.
The 2020 hindsight is a beautiful thing. All right, I got to take a little bit of a shot at Doug Peterson here, and I know you sort of tweeted about this, about Doug taking all the bullets. That's his modus operandi now. Very Andy Reid-like. We need to do a better job coaching him up. I got to put him in a better position. It's almost like you play a tape from Andy Reid press conferences from yesteryear for Doug Peterson. That pick 6 was somehow Doug Peterson's fault. Really? You can question the quarterback. You can question the wide receiver.
Nick's fault. Yeah.
Somehow it's on Nick that play came down. So more power to him. I used to roll my eyes when Andy did it, so I'll roll my eyes now when Coach Sirianni does it. But he's doing what he feels he must to protect his players, which basically is a good thing. But here's where he lost me yesterday when he said, I don't get too high when we win and I don't get too low. So if you guys are looking for me to be either ticked off or bummed out, that's not me. Excuse me? He's one of the most emotional coaches I've ever seen in my entire life. Did we lose the video from him running over to the stands in Indianapolis, high-fiving fans and screaming, "That's for Frank Reich"? What are you talking about? You're not one of those guys who has high highs
Well, I think
or low lows. Stop it. You don't really – did he say that with a straight face? Did he look right into the camera and say that yesterday, John McMullen?
Well, and I think he's saying with the microphone. Yeah, in the game, the emotion of the game, yeah, he probably gets too emotional, which he admits at times. But on the microphone, you got to stay more measured. Look, I think it's a good thing, but, we also know it. What Nick does, and this is what you should do if you're a head coach, is when things go bad, he blames himself. And when things go well, he praises the players. That's what you should, or the assistant coach. That's what you should do. That's absolutely what you should do. But we also know at this stage, it's a bunch of hooey. We know it wasn't your fault. We know it was Gardner Minshew's fault. I asked, we asked Nick 20 different ways, and to his credit, he never wavered. And I asked him, what's the teaching point? I mean, you and Shane can't call a perfect play every time. What's the teaching point for the quarterback, the receiver, whatever? He didn't bite. The credit to him. But we all know it's not true. So it's a give and take. But, from his perspective, players like him, coaches like him, because he will take the blame when things go wrong, and he will dish out all the credit in the world when things go right to the players, but he's never going to blame the players. And that's what you should do, to be honest.
I agree. And, oh, by the way, despite these last two losses, ugly losses, painful losses, Eagle fan, let's be honest, they're still 13-3. At some point, you always have to go back and do a reset record, by the way, 13-3.
They should have, we're all waiting for another franchise record. They've never won 14 games in the season. They should have done it before this. So it's a little disappointing. But I'll say again, 13, you say 13-3. 13-1 with the starting quarterback. 13-1 with the starting quarterback.
Yeah,
so
but Gardner Minshew is a starting quarterback. He's one of the top 32 in the
with
league.
Their starting quarterback. And again, yes. Again, and I use the baseball analogy. There are 30 teams, but there aren't 30 aces, but there's 30 number ones. And the same thing in football. There's technically 32 starters because there has to be 32 starters, but they're not 32 men in the world who deserve to be NFL starters. The supply doesn't meet the demand. It never has. It never will. Same thing happens in other sports. Jalen Hurts has played like a top 5 quarterback this year. There is a big difference between top 5 and bottom 5.
Right. And again, I don't think Gardner Minshew. When you're the second best quarterback on the field in a game started by Andy Dalton on the other side, that pretty much tells you where Gardner Minshew is at.
Andy Dalton, by the way. My God, that guy. I thought he was going to build a house in the middle of Lincoln Pine. He holds on to the football so much. I joked, because we talk about this all the time here. I joked, whoever wins this, whoever loses this game, I said sacks are not going to be a winning stat because they both sacked the quarterback 100 times.
Getting crushed. Both teams were getting crushed. And, oh, by the way, yes, Andy Dalton is now 4-0 against Philadelphia Eagles lifetime. I know it goes back to Cincinnati. It's irrelevant to what's happening now. 4-0 is 4-0. Any way you want to slice it, it's 4-0. But we have to wait on Jalen Hurts to find out if he is capable of playing. We do not know that yet. I don't think we're going to know it for at least a couple days. Johnny Mack said Thursday is probably going to be the big reveal. And if Nick Sirianni had his druthers, he'd probably try and wait till Sunday at 12:30. Or no, at 4 o'clock, since it's a 4:25 start. If he thought he could keep it under wraps, he would attempt to do that. Sorry, Coach, that can't happen this week. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald. We're taking a quickie timeout. When we return, one of our regulars, Chris Franklin, does an outstanding job covering the Eagles for NJ.com. He's going to jump on with us here on Birds 365.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Mac here with you on Birds 365. Our buddy Chris Franklin should be streaming in here any second, and when he does, we will certainly punch him up. John, I've referenced a couple of calls I got last night doing my show on WIP. Got on early because of what transpired in Monday Night Football, the suspension of the game, continued good thoughts and prayers to Demar Hamlin of the Bills, who had to be taken from the field immediately to a hospital. He is in critical but stable condition because his vitals have been stabilized. So that was good news. I did get this question. I'm going to run it by you. And when Chris Franklin joins us, I'm going to run it by him as well, from an Eagle fan who said that the Eagles can get extra motivation for this Sunday's game against the New York Giants because of Kayvon Thibodeau's reaction to laying out one Nick Foles. that the hero of the Super Bowl of the Philadelphia Eagles of
People
2017.
can't quit Nick Foles, man. They can't quit Nick Foles.
They
in
did.
Philadelphia.
I couldn't believe I got this. That Eagle fans needed added inducement to root hard for the Eagles on Sunday. Forget the fact that they needed to get first place in the NFC, that they can win a division. No, Kayvon Thibodeau did snow angels while Nick Foles convulsed next to him on the field. And that's the reason why Eagle fans should be pumped up and ready for this game on Sunday. Does it get you pumped up, Chris Franklin?
Yeah, nah. I'm sorry. That's a
boy, man.
That's a unique.
That Folesian society runs deep, Chris. It's small, but it runs deep.
That's a. I don't even know how to put that in a word. That's a new one. I mean, don't get me wrong. Nick did a lot.
When I got the call, thank you, Chris, for confirming my suspicions. That I
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thibodeau doing snow angels. Probably not the best thing for him. I'm sure he wasn't paying attention, but he's down on the field.
Let me take a shot, and I did this again Sunday and last night, and I'll do it again here. The fact that he hit Foles and Foles goes down, and like I said, he looked like he was convulsing on the field. And here's Thibodeau doing snow angels. I'll buy his explanation afterwards. They didn't even know that Foles was hurt on the play. And sorry, the moment he got a little excited, he overreacted and the like. Did you see what he did on the sidelines afterwards?
I did not.
You didn't?
No,
did you catch it, Chris?
No, I missed
They caught it on camera. After he comes off the field, after doing snow angels, after realizing Foles was down on the play, went over to the sidelines and went like this. That he put Nick Foles to sleep. Now, there's no explaining that one after the fact. You want to try and explain it away that, hey, I didn't see him. He was approximately 3 feet away from you, and somehow you didn't see him. Okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one. You can't go on putting him to sleep on the sidelines afterwards. So I actually understood the point the caller was trying to make. This was a bad reaction from Kayvon Thibodeau, and he should be chastised for it, but that's what the Eagle fans really need to get them pumped up for the game on Sunday. Not the fact that Giants, not the fact that it's for the division, not the fact that it's for the number one seed, not the fact that they've lost 2 games in a row. We hate Kayvon Thibodeau. Yeah, I wasn't going there.
So I wonder how Coy Detmer feels after nobody avenged him after he broke his arm. I wonder how some of these other guys went there too.
January 3rd. What is today? January 3rd, 2020, 2023. Yeah. Happy New Year, by the way, Chris.
Happy New Year.
And there's certain people still worried about Nick Foles in Philadelphia. They got bigger fish to fry, as they say. But before we get to that, were you watching the game last night? Obviously, just a horrible situation. We went through something I thought was bad on Sunday with Josh Sweat, and then all of a sudden you see something this serious. It was quite a shock to some people. How do you think the whole thing was handled?
I was coming in from I was driving back from the office. I actually was coming home, and I walked in and I was like, hey, what's going on? I said, why is everybody standing around? The first thing I saw was Josh Allen with a tear rolling down. So I was like, well, what happened in the middle of it? And then start hearing like what you see so many times, like we saw Sunday when people put the neck injuries, you see them with cards. We all remember Dennis Byrd and everything else. When you see something like that, it hits you in a way different manner, and it gets you. And listen, I don't know. We're in a he said situation now with the whole 5-minute thing. I'm restarting everything. I don't care. I don't know who said what, but if it came out that they really said, okay, yeah, let's get back together and start playing 5 minutes from now, that's completely unacceptable. And you had a guy's life hanging in the balance. And don't get me wrong, we all love football. Everybody on here loves football. People who are watching here loves football. But when there's something to be said that a guy's life whose heart stopped of all things, and the only thing you worry about, well, let's get everybody back together and it'll be fun. It is callous, and you can't do that, something like that. So I'll get this. The ESPN, I thought did a great job trying to do what they could. Those players were in an impossible situation. You just hope that he continues to do better and to improve, because it's heavy. It's really heavy. You hope he gets better.
Our thoughts and prayers for Hamlin and his family and the Bills' entire football community. And hopefully we get some good news before the day is out. No good news on Eagle front with the 2 straight losses. Or is there? Jalen's going to be back. Johnny Mac told me earlier in the show he's definitely going to be back. I don't know if he said definitely, but he said he believes he's going to be back. Should we all believe he's going to be back on Saturday? You want to throw a percentage out there on a Tuesday morning before a Sunday game that Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback when the Eagles, well, they're going to win the coin toss and they're going to defer. So you got to wait till the Giants get the ball first. But then when he gets a chance, will Jalen Hurts be out there as the Eagles starting quarterback?
I think there's an 80% chance he's playing. I think it's that much because I know he didn't take snaps. I know he's right, but this game is way too important for everything else they need to go there. Because the last thing his team wants to go is to be still as banged up as they are, having to travel down to Tampa again. They're playing a wild card round. This team. I think I'm not for throwing him out there if he's not 100%. But at this point right now, I think the season's on a lot. I really truly think any aspirations of them having a Super Bowl hinges on this game. Probably against backups, but it hinges on this game because home field and that bye week, this team really needs it in the worst way. So I think this is one of those situations where I'm not for it unless he's not, even if I'm not completely behind it, but it's one of those things where it's probably going to have to, you're going to have him because that offense last week was bad. There's no other way to put it. It was just bad.
Yeah, and the quarterback was bad, no question about it. Gardner Minshew did not play well. I broke one of my own rules, Chris. Because typically, it's a cliche, but it's true. Typically, the quarterback gets too much credit when the team wins, too much blame when the team loses. Not this case. I mean, Gardner was just that bad. And I think everything offensively stemmed from the poor performance from the quarterback more than I know there's a lot of criticism of the coaching staff. When your quarterback's playing like that, I mean, there's not much you can do. But you bring up a point with the Giants. In a weird way, does that complicate matters? Because if the Giants had to win the game, there's at least the human nature aspect of, well, they're not going to play. They're key players. They don't have anything to play for. They can't move. They have a real chance to upset Minnesota in the first round. They don't want to risk Saquon Barkley or Daniel Jones. Does that give you a false sense of security is what I'm trying to say.
I don't think so. I think if this was a very young team I think if this was a very young team overall, I think I would worry about that. But I think you got a lot of these guys like Fletch and Kelsey and all those other guys that have been through this and they know this. And so I don't think it's going to be a false sense of security. I'm just hoping it's not one of those things where they become very passive in their play call and their play calling where they think, okay, you know what, let's just run on defense. Let's just run. Well, you see it so many times. Everything so much like straight base cover 2, base cover 3, just get out of there without being hurt. And just hope the offense scores just enough against these backups, and then we'll just walk off the field. I just hope it's not one of these where it's called differently because of everything that's going on there. That's the thing I'm worried about. You're going to have to. I think this is a game where you roll Jalen out of the pocket a little bit more, especially to his left. I know everybody talks about he's done a lot better to his left, but after seeing the way that Cam Jordan did that one power move where he just basically took a hand right into the middle of Jack Driscoll, pushed him back into the pocket. I think you're sweet. You keep rolling them out, and that's how you keep them safe. But I don't think it's gonna be that much of confidence. I'm worried about the scheme.
You went to Jack Driscoll, and that's where I wanted to go next. And we had you on last week, so I'm sure we asked you. I can't remember exactly what you said. How the Eagles would fill the void of Lane Johnson being out of the lineup. I think most everyone projected it would be Driscoll, and it was. He wasn't good. He had a bad game. I'll ask Johnny Mac to look up the PFF grades, but I can pretty much guess that his is going to be pretty putrid for this past week. He had help on that offensive line of those not playing well, penalties and the like. He was not the only one who dropped the ball on the Eagle O-line on Sunday, but he might have been the most glaring. Do they revisit? Should I be asking you the same question? Is there a chance that they change their mind and this week they move Mailata over to right tackle and insert Andre Dillard at left tackle?
I think they still keep it the same way because they really, really don't like doing. But I think if it was a playoff game, I think they'd visit that one. But I think this week they'll try to give them Driscoll a little bit more. I think it's one of those things you hate to use more two tight end sets, but I think you might see Jack Stoll over here a little bit more. I thought they would do more of the good chipping. I think when that touchdown pass they threw to AJ Brown, I forget who the running back was, but what they did was really good. Like he got a good chip block on him and neutralized him before he went out on his route. And I thought you'd see more of that, but you didn't. So if it had to be a playoff game, I think as much as I'm also not a fan of not switching too much around now because you think you miss continuity and you got too much stuff going on when it happens. But I think they roll with Driscoll at least for one more week until Lane possibility of Lane coming back. For the
in a weird way, I think it's a good sign, Chris, because if Lane was going to be out, I don't think there's any doubt Jordan Mailata would be the right tackle and Andre Dillard would be the left tackle. Yeah. So that to me is sort of a good sign, the fact that they're trying to get through it without those moving parts because they know Lane Johnson's going to be back for the playoffs, or at least is going to try. I think the question isn't whether Lane is going to play, it's whether he's going to finish, because we know how tough Lane is. But to Jody's point, Jack Driscoll didn't get a good grade, but there were 3 players worse than Jack Driscoll on offense. One is obvious, Gardner Minshew, who was the worst graded player. Quez Watkins, which is typical, and Jack Stoll, although Jack didn't play that much. So, yeah. It wasn't a great day from the offensive perspective. Now, people, because we are in Philadelphia and Jonathan Gannon, there's still some criticism of the defense. The opening drive was terrible. I mean, it took forever. It was 100 plays and half of the first half, seemingly. Taysom Hill just converting short yardage. But after that, it's kind of lights out from a defensive perspective. Another 6+ sack game. Can you imagine? Now, granted, it's 17 games, but if the Eagles get 4 sacks, they will have the most sacks in NFL history. Who saw that coming?
Did not, especially after last year. No, they didn't see that as well too. Then. As I look at that first drive, it was really bad. And the problem where they were having, you would think they would have adjusted. I would have played Linval Joseph even more, or Jordan Davis even more. A combination of that was they were getting about like 5-6 yards of first down or second down, and then by the time it was like third down, it was like 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. It's like, okay, now you really going into Taysom Hill territory, and that's where he had his success because you don't know what he's going to do. It's so hard to predict what the play is going to be. So I thought. After a while, I thought they adjusted very well, especially after I thought they did very well. Josiah Scott kept them in that game, I think, because if
Josiah played well, he played well.
He did, and if the Saints scored a touchdown at that right before the half, I think this is I think it's a route from that point on because it's as we saw with the offense. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm not putting this loss on again. I mean, even Jordan Mailata after the game said everyone knows that this loss was on the offense. He said that as well too, and that's other words I won't say on there as well too. But yeah, he said pretty much
a lot of F-bombs. Yeah. He also said the officials have never seen an effing pancake in their life from Landon Dickerson's block. Should have been a 28-yard touchdown for Kenny Gainwell.
And he was saying too, like he thought it was on him too, because he said he had hold of the outside of the guy.
Yeah, he might have been called for holding more than, but he kind of, because I assume that's what happened. I assume they called Jordan and got the number wrong, but he insisted no, they called it on Landon. He said they could have called it on me, but they called it on Landon.
It's crazy because they always give you the inside pad part, right? The inside pad part there. If you're outside, you get that. But when you get the inside, that's just controlling somebody.
Yeah, too much domination. 10-yard penalty.
We know that it was just a month ago that the Eagles went up the turnpike and basically decimated the Giants, crushed them. Their offense put up a 48 spot that day. They just slice and dice the Giant defense. Giant offense didn't do much. Daniel Jones was accountable for 2 of the touchdowns, but not a great performance by him, and he got lifted in the game. I have to do a couple mea culpas when it comes to Daniel Jones, because I said before the season started, he's a bottom 10 quarterback. Never going to be a franchise quarterback. The Giants have to make a decision about him, and they should go in another direction. He's had a pretty good year. He's a top half of the league quarterback. I'm still not sure he's in the top 10, but he's a top half of the quarterback type year. If the Giants decide to play him, any issues that the Eagles will have with him? Like you mentioned, Taysom Hill playing quarterback did some pretty good running against them. Kyler Murray, a quarterback they played earlier, almost beat him out there in Arizona. Should the Eagles, we always say, oh, the Eagles should be good at holding down a running quarterback because they got to face Jalen in practice all the time. He practices walkthroughs. Come on. They don't really practice taking down a running quarterback. Does Daniel Jones and his ability to run the football scare you at all this weekend in this game?
I think it's a concern in the fact that I think one of the Eagles' best strengths is, as we were talking about earlier with the sacks, I think that could be the one thing that works against them with Daniel Jones, because sometimes what we've seen at times when these edge rushers in the contain, they go in for the sack or they do the spin move. Next thing you know, they lose contain, and next thing you know, the quarterback's on the outside running for 5, 10, 15 yards and a first down. That's the thing I'm going to be looking at. I want to see them continue to contain. I don't think you need to spy them. I don't think you need to use a resource like Kaiser White or TJ or safety, what have you. I don't think you're at that point yet, because I think you're going to need, even with those receivers still, I don't think you need that. But if he does play, I think it's just a matter of making sure that you keep those edge rushers and go, hey, guys, we just need you to keep your outside shoulder free. Don't let them out. Don't let them buy them time that way, and just let those interior defensive tackles just do their magic too. And that's the way I'd probably worry about that. Other than that, I'm not too worried when it comes to him.
Yeah, for a couple reasons. One, I don't think the Giants are going to play him that much. They might start him, but I think he's going to be out pretty quickly. But yeah, anytime. I think discipline on the pass rush comes into it a little bit more. But the Eagles, in Chicago with Justin Fields, they gave up a couple plays. That's even more of a problem. And with Daniel Jones last time, they did a pretty good job with that kind of stuff. So, that front has been great all year. I'm starting to think that, Hassan Reddick should be in the defensive player of the year conversation. Now, Nick Bosa is going to win it. We all know that, but he should be top 5, Hassan Reddick. He's been so effective. The secondary, though, we were talking about this a little earlier, Chris. They've sort of come back down. I'm not even going to say come back down to earth, but there's been a little bit of an adjustment. Is that because they were just so good early that it's natural? Because those opposing passer ratings against Slay and Bradbury, they were ridiculous first half of the season. And now you see a little bit more of them getting beat. Is that just sort of a market correction?
I think it's one of those things where I think teams are just really to try it a little more and test the markets a little bit there, because there's times when you weren't even thinking about Slay just basically took away half the field and Bradbury was the main target. That's the person they're looking at. I also starting to think you're starting to see the effects of C.J. Gardner-Johnson being out, really starting to really take his form now, because you have to worry about, if he was playing that middle field, if you're going to try those deep shots, you have to worry about putting the ball in the right position, because you can undercut it too. So I think that if anything, I think that's the biggest thing, where you don't have him back there lurking, and teams are now, since you don't have that, I mean, Reed Blankenship's doing an okay job. I think once you have that, you're missing. Once you miss C.J. Gardner-Johnson, you're missing a lot. They're taking shots, and you're starting to see that, because these corners can do good for 3-4 seconds, but if you got a guy, or if you have a guy like for the Saints, the way he went by Bradbury too, that's not his strength. Bradbury's strength is baiting the people.
By the way, I got to give a shout out to Mike Quick. Before the game, he said that kid was going to get the Eagles. He was going to get a big one, and he was right. He was 100% right. I didn't even know who he was. Weber State, undrafted rookie, but he's fast.
I was worried about him on a kickoff or punt coverage, because I've seen a couple of things. I remember he had a 42-yard one. I forget who, but he had a 42-yard return. I was like, okay, yeah, this guy worries me a little bit. But other than that, yeah, he's going to be a problem. He reminds me of Dante Stallworth in a way for them. He could be like a Dante Stallworth type guy, with the speed. I'm not saying he's going to put the production that way, but he could be that type of guy for the Saints, though.
Chris, everyone is going to be narrow focused on Carson Wentz's shoulder this week, and you guys will do your best to drip information out of the Philadelphia Eagles. Good luck with that. But there are other injuries that we need to know about. You mentioned one, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson didn't even open up his practice window last week, which we thought was going to happen. Do you think that happens this week? How important is it for him to get back into a game? We talk all the time about quarterbacks shaking rust off. Every football player who hasn't played for a month, I think, has to shake off a little bit of rust. Any speculation on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, whether he's going to be able to get some time in at the regular season before the playoffs get underway?
I tried reaching out to a couple people, and it's been nothing with that so far. I mean, I saw him doing some conditioning on the side last week, but it was nothing major, just like versus sprints, like just basically like he's getting the cardio up. I think that's the biggest thing. I think it's getting the stamina after sitting around for so long, just getting stamina, his game shape stamina back. So I don't think he's going to suit up. I don't think they're open his window this week personally. I think it might be something where you see him if they win and they get that bye week, they do it. So that way they really get him acclimated, try to get him back as much as they can. But I thought last week, if they were going to activate it before regular season, I thought last week would have been the week. So that way you got him the one, then they would rest him again and then go on again. But yeah, the team needs him back in a big way.
I think if we're going to see CJ, it's the playoffs. I don't think the window is getting started this week. I'm with you, and they're certainly not going to play him this week. So if he returns, and that's open-ended, because Nick, he's not honest with injuries. He said, but that one's a little bit different, than a typical ankle sprain, knee sprain, whatever, shoulder sprain like Jalen has. All right, this is grade 2 to 3 weeks, sort of the history of that type of injury with a lacerated kidney. And there could be a dislocated rib in there as well. So really difficult. I think people look back to Zach Ertz and Zach playing so quickly. They're also different. Not everyone's the same. So that's an injury that is really, truly open-ended because you just don't see it that often. And ultimately it has to heal. Because we've seen CJ a couple times. He's happy, he's go-lucky, he's, his normal ebullient self, but you can feel great and it might not be healthy to where you can go play football and have collisions like unfortunately you saw last night. So there's a lot of uncertainty with CJ Gardner-Johnson. Lane Johnson, I talked about a little bit before. I think you're with me. We know he's going to try to play. So do you think the Eagles are doing a disservice by not doing a little bit more manipulation? Because, and I know people are not fans of Andre Dillard in this town, but Andre Dillard is better than Jack Driscoll. Maybe not better at right tackle, but the old adage is you got to get your best people on the field. I don't think the best people are on the field. I think if you move Mailata to right tackle, you move Andre Dillard to left tackle, your best five are on the field without Lane Johnson. But is it worth it? Is it worth it just as a safety net because Lane might not be able to finish a game?
If they weren't playing the Giants this week, I think you'd probably explore it because I'm not the biggest, especially when you have to switch over Mailata to play a whole different thing. He's been doing it all season. He's been kicking his left leg back. He's been setting up that way too. And they tell him, "Oh yeah, go over this week and try to remember all the rules, but do it for the opposite side." It's a lot harder than it sounds like when we say it. So I'm not really keen on that, but I think if it wasn't playing Giants, if this was a playoff game right now, we would see and they try to do the best they can to hold up that way and make their adjustments. But
you know what, Chris? The beauty about Mailata is he doesn't know it's difficult. He doesn't know. He doesn't know you're supposed to be uncomfortable. He's like, "All right, mate, I'll do it." He doesn't know because he never played, and he did it before. And he went to the right side. And he's like, "Yeah, whatever."
Yeah. I think it took a while too. Like he did. I think he did well. Diller did well when he filled in. I just think like Mailata was building up to as well too. Like his mentality is like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do it. Like, it's okay. I'll beat my feet all and all. It's like he'll do that stuff. But it's one of those things where it's like, you know what? It's almost like saying like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna put you guys inside playing a quarterback right now. You're like, I can do that. It's cool. It's no problem. Ah, crap. Who's an A gap on somebody else? This stuff too. Like you get there, like the attitude's there, but when it comes to the execution part of it, that's where like it may take a little while for it to happen on there. But so he'll always, all those guys, no matter who's on that offensive line, who's on that team, they'll be willing to play somewhere. It's a matter of if they can do it quickly and well at high level and quickly. I think he could do it at a high level. The quickness about how he would do it, it may take a quarter, it may take a half, but we've seen all it takes is a half with this team like against the Saints, and you're behind.
Chris, I think we can all agree there is some pressure on Eagles this week. There was a very good chance that there would be no pressure on Eagles this week 2 weeks ago before they played Dallas, before they played New Orleans. So we know they need to win to lock up home field throughout the playoffs and to win a division. So there's some pressure. We can debate how much pressure, but you have to acknowledge that there is some. Is there any way that you can look at this as a good thing? That had they beaten Dallas and then you got 2 weeks of inactivity and a bye week and guys coming back from it and you don't know what they're going to hit the field with for that first playoff game, that at least with the pressure of needing a win this week, it keeps people focused and it keeps them playing at a specific level? Or am I just trying to come up with an Eagle spin ankle that makes it somewhat less obnoxious that they've lost their last 2 games?
I think if you said that after the Dallas game, yeah, okay, I could see that spin being like, okay, they lost that one, they'll keep focused, and then they don't have to be all for the next 2 games. This past loss, nah, because how many times have we seen teams for the last 20 years, what have you? Like it's one of those things where you got times where you got the 2 weeks off, and there's still a lot of number one. I know recent history with the number one seeds has been great getting to the Super Bowl,
year,
but
0 for 2.
Yeah, it has been rough. But I think at least having 2 weeks in before your next game, I think is a big thing, and they don't find themselves in that position anymore. I think especially when you look at the way they lost last week, I think roster had top to bottom. That's a much better roster than the Saints. And you just let them, just basically, especially early on, like they just were out physical and just bullied them in a way. When you look at the way that on both sides of the ball until they finally got the stuff corrected and they went from there on out. So yeah, I can't even see that spin. After last week's win, that spin, I can't see that as well too. This team should be rested. We all should be like resting up, going like, hey, you know what? Here's our preseason. We're in preseason mode this week. We got the bye week, and then
we should have been 1 o'clock, Chris. Now we're 4:25. Not the worst case scenario, but
I'll still take it. It's also not 8:30. It's also not 8:30 or 8:15.
The offensive coaching staff, they're taking some hits because of the performance. Too often this season, and let's be honest, they're still 13-3. They're 13-1 with their starting quarterback, so it doesn't happen a lot. But there are sort of lulls where the time of possession gets out of whack. Because they don't convert third downs, they use tempo a little bit too much, and all of a sudden you have these weird skews. You had it in the first half again. I think Miles ran it twice, and everybody's losing their mind. How could you possibly run Miles Sanders? Well, he had 15 stinking plays. I mean, he's not going to run it 17 times because you have 15 plays, so you can't give it to him too much. Plus, Miles is dealing with a knee, and he's got a brace on. Maybe that played into it. The offensive game plan, how much blame do you put there, I guess, versus how much blame do you just say, hey, Gardner didn't have it?
You know, it's funny you brought up the run game because yesterday I was thinking 1 or 2 questions to ask. And I was thinking either what happened with Gardner, looking at that one in a game, or the other one is why is the run game not having gotten over 100 yards the last 2 weeks? And I think to me, as I look at that play call, even if it's not this team, when it was really successful, the run game was humming and it set up their passing game exponentially. Like you look at that now, they have a run the game well. I know Miles is dealing with his knee. is roster management wise, knowing it's tough. That might have been a game where you bring up Trey Sermon, because I think you look at the weakness of the Saints. You should have been running that ball. You look at the Cowboys. You should have been running the ball. I'm not saying that this. Not saying go back to the 3 yards of cloud at dust times we used to see, or last year's version of the Eagles. But I think it's one of those things where, especially with a backup quarterback in there, you control the clock. You get set up all your play action passes. You give him, and I think the play action gives him a little bit more separation. And we know he doesn't. Gardner's Zone is not as strong as Jalen, so he needs more timing. He needs the timing to get in the rhythm. I thought that would have been a lot better to set him up for that. So when I look at the way that Nick and Shane, Kevin, and Patullo, and everybody else set that game plan up, I thought they could have done better with that. I really do. And even with Miles banged up, you still had Kenny Gainwell proved when he had that right side not holding whoever that was called on, whatever, but. They should have gone back to him. I would have seen more game. I would have seen more Boston Scott. I think Scott's a really good north-south runner when it comes to that, especially when you attack a defense like the Saints. That would have been the play. So I look at the way that I look at the lack of using the run game more, not running it more, maybe additional 5-6 carries earlier in the game if you have 15, but still give you defensive rest or run some clock and just try to balance it back out a little bit. I thought that would have been a better way to do it.
Chris, I could take the easy route out and say, how do you think the Eagles are going to do Sunday against the Giants? I'm not going there. Instead, I'll go to the other NFC East matchup, because if the Eagles lose, they can still back into the number 1 overall seed, or they at least could back into the division if the Cowboys were to lose. However, the Cowboys are playing the Commanders. And Coach Ron Rivera, who, my opinion, royally screwed up last week by putting Carson Wentz in as their starting quarterback. Shouldn't have happened. I said it long before. Carson threw his 3 interceptions and put up his worst passer rating ever. All those ugly games here in Philadelphia.
He might have been the one quarterback worse than Gardner Minshew last week. He might have been the one.
He might have been it, yes. And after the game, Rivera wouldn't admit his mistake and go, yeah, I can't start this guy again next week. He is not committed to either Carson Wentz or Taylor Heineke or Ed Kratz's favorite, Sam Howell, coming off the bench. Is there any chance that the Commanders can be competitive against the Cowboys on Sunday?
Yeah, if they make it an ugly game, would you make their defensive line start to really get after Dak and force them? That's the only way. They're going to need defensive focus. Hope Brian Robinson takes over that game, because that's the only way I can do it. If I'm them, Heineke gives them the best shot, and I still, for life of me, I don't know why they felt like they need to force feed Carson Wentz back into that offense. I don't get that one at all.
By the way, the worst part of that, Chris, that whole thing, Ron Rivera didn't know he could be eliminated last week. That is astonishing to me. Did not know. Didn't seem to know. Yeah. And he was eliminated.
I don't think he wanted to know.
I'll give him a pass on that as compared to he made a decision to start Carson Wentz. Why? Why would you go there, Coach? That's what cost you your job, not the fact that you didn't know that you could be eliminated. We can work through that. The choice of Carson Wentz to start is the reason that he should be.
I need attention to detail. Ooh, yeah. I mean, you're right. Bad decision, but if you're the head coach, you got to know. Hey, we got to win this game. And his explanation was, I was worried about taking care of our business. I never thought we were going to lose, so I didn't buy. But can you imagine Nick Sirianni not knowing the implications of this week? I can't imagine that. That's a bad look for any NFL
Famously,
coach.
An Eagle coach once did go down that road. Rich Kotite had no idea that the Eagles were still alive after a loss. He goes, "We're still in the playoffs."
Yeah, Rich doesn't have the best reputation. That's one of the reasons why.
Yeah.
We used our ace package. We thought our guys were doing well, and we had to do that. No, it's got 7-2 go 7-9. He was just. I remember. Now, granted, I was young, but even then, I was like, "It stinks." It's one of those things. Like, it's bad, man. But no, I think it's one of those things where somebody went to him and was like, "Hey, we have this playoff." And he just put, "No, I don't want to know. I don't want to know." And that deniability, trying to do that, and he set himself up for that. I think he's confident.
Maybe.
It's rough.
Yeah, but those Eagle teams never left anything in the locker room. I can tell you that for sure. All right, Chris Franklin, quickly. Eagles going to win or Eagles going to lose against the Giants on Sunday?
You know, I've been picking them to win the last 2 weeks, and next thing you know, we see what happened. But if this team loses the backups, they don't deserve to go anywhere in the playoffs. So they should win this game. Or they should win this game.
Good enough, brother. We expect to have you on. We know we're going to have you on next week because the Eagles are going to be in the playoffs. Whether it'll be a bye week or a home week or a road week, that we don't know. We'll find out Sunday. We know we'll be talking to you next week. Thanks, brother.
Thanks. I'm going to call it Coach like the rest of the day now. I might ask a question.
Yeah,
Coach
that was a nice impression. Pull that out.
Thank you. I'll talk to you guys. I'll talk to y'all later next week. I'll see y'all later. Yeah.
That's 20 years of memory there. We are impressed, Chris Franklin. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Chris
Y'all have a
Franklin
good
from
one.
NJ.com here with us on Birds 365. Quickie timeout. We put a bow on the show. Stay right there.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
We've got to go because Cohen's got to go because Ricky Saratella's coming up with his playbook. So I have just one question for you, John McMullen. Jonathan Gannon will attempt to tell you it's a happy Tuesday today. Good luck with that, Coach. But if there's one thing you need an answer on or clarification from either of the two coordinators, be it Gannon and or Steichen, what's the one question you need answered today?
It's definitely offensive, and it probably has to do with the pick six. But I mean, we didn't get the answer from Nick, so we're certainly not going to get it from Shane. But we know the answer, and we know what it really was. The defense played pretty well after the first drive. There's no issue with the defense if you give up essentially 13 points because 7 was the pick six. You should win. an NFL game, even with the backup quarterback when you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Miles Sanders, and still 4 Pro Bowl level offensive linemen. So it's all offense this week.
I agree. So tell Shane we said hi. Good show today, buddy. We thank our guests, Tommy Lawler and Chris Franklin, for hopping on tomorrow. You get Mike Gill and Jeff Mosher. So we got 2 good guests coming your way tomorrow. Partner, I'm here tomorrow. I'm back in 2 and 2. Are you?
Yeah, day to day, but I plan on it, as I always say, Jody.
McMullen and McDonald back in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.